comedy circuit, and in sport, an exclusive extract from Bernard Brogan's autobiography on the day his frustrations with Jim Gavin boiled over. The Sunday Independent. Real stories worth paying for in print or subscribe at independent.ie.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Yeah, you're welcome back to Off the Ball here on News Talk. John Duggan sitting in until 7 o'clock for Joe Malloy. As well as listening to us on News Talk right now, you can watch us on our live streams for Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the new OTB Sports app for iOS and Android. Search OTB Sports in your app store. It's time for the Sunday Paper Review with the presenter of Off the Bench here on Off the Ball and the sports writer Cliona Foley and the deputy editor of the Irish Racing Post, David Jennings. Good afternoon, Cliona and David.
Hi, John. How are you? David.
Looking forward to this, and let's just go through the sports sections and the back pages to start. The Sunday Independent. Championship set to cost the GA €19.5 million. So this is to get the championship off the ground between October and December. Reliance on the government and increased borrowings. Additional bank borrowings and the 40 million grant fund, this is for COVID across all three main sports, will need to cover not just the year shortfalls for the GA at national, provincial and county level, but also be part of a much contracted 2021 budgeted spend. So look, the championship is going ahead, I think, unless there's a real serious increase in cases and a more draconian approach by the state. But I think there is going to be a championship. I think there's a goodwill towards it from the government, and I think the GA want to see a championship. But I do think it will be behind closed doors between October and December. Also on the front page of the Sunday Independent, Gavin Gilroy and me will speak about this very shortly, about Bernard Brogan's new book. So that's the Sunday Independent. The Sunday Times, all about Ian Madigan. A brilliant photo of Ian Madigan when he kicked that winning score, as Neil Tracy was speaking about in the news round for Ulster. They're into the Pro 14 final against Leinster next Saturday. Madigan's moment, I think it's an apt description for a guy who really deserved a moment like that. I think Ian Madigan, of course, formerly of Leinster. GAA expected to confirm championships restart. So this is from Michael Foley in the Sunday Times. October the 24th and 25th. With the football championship. That's for the hurling championship, the football championship to begin a following week at Halloween. Inter-county training, of course, on Monday, September the 14th. Games within Northern Ireland behind closed doors, according to that article. And yeah, the competition might be delayed if an incident, say with COVID, potentially impacts the All-Ireland semi-finals and finals, but no delays will be considered during the provincial championships. We'll discuss that as well. Stephen Kenny will not alter the system. That is according to Paul Rowan, who was in Bulgaria the other day. This is the 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1 that Stephen Kenny espouses. Obviously, we've got Matt Doherty and Enda Stevens normally playing at wing-back for their clubs. We will play a back four. That's according to that. So plenty in the Sunday Times as well about the Premier League's return next weekend, and good articles in that as always. So there's a lot to talk about there. The Irish Daily Mail, rare old time. That's the back of that. So Stephen Kenny thrilled to be back in Dublin as he looks for freshness against the Finns. We've got commentary at 5 o'clock. A Nations League victory over Finland at the Aviva Stadium today, writes Philip Quinn, would complete a great weekend for the Republic of Ireland, according to manager Stephen Kenny. A really good article on Marcelo Bielsa in that. And Neil Warnock, we'll get to that in a bit. The Sunday World, we can pass the test. This is the back page of the Sunday World. New Ireland boss urges players to improve in their passing game, from John Brennan. And Barcelona seek a lower, I think this is meant to be Weege, but it is Wijnaldum, isn't it? So Liverpool braced for a cut price transfer offer from Barcelona for midfielder Jorginho Wijnaldum, as the Spanish giants look to sign the Dutch midfielder on the cheap. Generally in the back pages, Wijnaldum to Barca seems to be a pretty strong story. If the cap fits, skipper to stay, the shame. Oh, the puns are just brilliant. To the back of the Sun. Ireland against Finland. Neil O'Riordan writing that Stephen Kenny's insisted Seamus Coleman remains Ireland's captain even if he is not playing. Laugh in their face. Shamrock Rovers 1, Bohemians 0, as we saw yesterday. And Gary Breen will get to that as well. Back of the Sun. Doherty and Duffy need to learn fast about the back four. Will they play against Finland today? We'll find out a little bit later on. That is the Sun. The Sunday Mirror. I want my players to be pass masters. This is Stephen Kenny and his passing game. Kenny going sideways or back with the ball should always be the last option. Look forward first. And also on the back of the Mirror, City monitor Messi strike. Is the Messi situation done or dusted? I don't know. And then Cop tell Barca it's £15 million for Gini Wijnaldum. And then Bo's boss, Keith Long, left with a long face after the defeat to Shamrock Rovers in the top of the table match in the SSE Electricity Premier Division yesterday. And finally, on the tabloids, the Star, Stairway to Heaven, Ra saves blushes. Obviously, this is the English edition of the fact that England got a close call, a 1-0 win over Iceland in the Nations League last night. There's just a couple of other things as well to look at. The Sunday Business Post had got a massive feature on betting and the fact that Flutter, that is the company that owns what was Paddy Power Betfair, a whole new ball game. This is about the fact that they're going to potentially get into a really deep way in the American sports market, which has effectively been deregulated since 2018. This is a Supreme Court decision. Flutter with a real chance to make waves following some mergers in the US betting market. Also an article in the Sunday Business Post about Novak Djokovic, who's been brilliant on the court with 17 Grand Slams, but a few questionable personal decisions from Novak Djokovic around COVID and that kind of thing. So plenty to go through between now and 3 o'clock on the Sunday paper review. Cliona, we'll start with you. I think there's only one man to start with, and that is the great Bernard Brogan. The book is coming out.
Yeah, and you know, I'm never a huge fan. I know people talk about this. I'm never a huge fan of autobiographies, but when they're written about somebody, obviously, clearly, who's got such a profile, but also by somebody of a really good quality, you were always interested.
Kieran
and
Shannon,
this one's been written by Kieran Shannon, which immediately tells you, I think, that you're probably going to get some decent stuff. And obviously, the first excerpts are from it are exclusively in the Sunday Indo today, and there is some very good stuff in it. And I suppose there's two pieces. One is about his relationship with Jim Gavin and trying to break back into the team in the last season. But the one that really interested me was the one actually with Pat Gilroy, about his relationship with Pat Gilroy. Because I always think that Gilroy didn't get enough credit for what he did with that Dublin team. And he was the one who, you know, established a sort of a work ethic there, I think, was clearly very, very, probably, how would you put it, central to Dermot Connolly and Dermot Connolly's game and everything that happened with Dermot Connolly becoming such a brilliant player. But this is a fascinating piece because clearly he wasn't ever going to let Bernard Brogan away with thinking that all his job was to do was score points or goals. And it's very, very revealing, and it's the kind of stuff you want in an autobiography. It starts off with him talking about how Gilroy dropped Mark Vaughan because he said, you know, he caught him having a drink in Cafe on Seine. Pat rang him the next day and we never saw Mark with Dublin again. And Gilroy had this kind of, you know, very serious demeanour always. But, you know, you sense as well that there was real steel behind the man. So this is very, very revealing about how he put Bernard through his paces and made him realise that he had to do a big defensive job as well. I think it's really good. I think people will really want to read it.
Will you want to read it, David?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the way Gilroy basically moulded Brogan into this modern forward. This idea of, you know, keeping your position in the full forward line, not tracking back. Like, he really drilled that out of him. And like, there's a couple of fantastic paragraphs in it. Like he says here midway through, he said he kept at me during those early weeks of 2010. It bordered on defamation and public harassment. He says a couple of nights he had me at wing back where I had to make all these extra runs tracking the likes of Flinner, and he dogged me any time I didn't. One night we were out in Ballymun in the driving range when he stopped the play and called me out in front of everyone. Bernard, what are you bleeding doing? Why weren't you back helping out your teammates? Well, I just thought I'd be better off if I waited for the ball to break and be an outlet here for the counter-attack. That's bullshit. Tug in. I'm fed up looking at you. And he went in and tugged in, and it was a kind of a mental challenge for Bernard that night, because I presume Gilroy thought, we'll see what Bernard is made of. Will he drive home and go off in a huff? And he actually didn't. He waited around for, I think, his brother to come back and Ross McConnell, I think it was, and he stayed there. And I think a couple of things from both extracts, the bit about Gilroy and the piece about when he was told he wasn't in the matchday squad for the semi-final against Mayo, it shows how tough mentally Bernard was. Now, a lot of the Dublin people probably find these things tough to read, and certainly the way he was treated and stuff, but like, he must have serious mental toughness to get through like these kind of setbacks, and especially last year for a player of his profile to not be in the squad and then to say, look, I'm going to put all that to one side and I'm going to do whatever you need me to do in training before the match. Very, very interesting, John, and you do get an insight into the Bernard Brogan, the human being, as well as Bernard Brogan, the footballer.
Yeah, and I think Bernard Brogan was a late developer with the Dubs. He didn't come into the Peter Caffrey era really in a major way until he's about 23, about 2007. It's interesting, as you say, Cliona, about the tough love that he received from Pat Gilroy. It's a real insight, actually. it's funny that you think in 2011 that it all just turned on that Stephen Cluxton kick and all the things that need to happen for Dublin to get where they got to in 2011 after the shellacking in 2009 against Kerry. And Bernard Brogan was Footballer of the Year in 2010. That was the year, and that extract is from the year when he won the Footballer of the Year award. So he seemed to be turned completely inside out from Pat Gilroy, and you're getting a sense of all the work that goes in. Imagine Kerry had won that All-Ireland. You never know these things. You never know what Pat Gilroy did in all those years to get Dublin to the promised land after 16 years. And then I was reading the Jim Gavin bit, and I'll read this out. This is a phone call that Jim and Bernard had when he told him he wasn't in the panel for the semi-final against Mayo last year. If you give me a fifth, a tenth, 100th of the energy and encouragement you've given Dermot, I'd have taken your hand off. You're backing him, that's great. I'm all for empowering players, but if I felt someone was backing me like that, I'd feel bulletproof. Bulletproof. Obviously he was emotional, but it's a real insight into a tense call between Jim Gavin and Bernard Brogan.
Yeah, and clearly Brogan was never, as you'd expect, never afraid to express an opinion with managers. He always obviously talked back or argued back or had a reason why he was saying, look, I think we should do it this way. But it is really interesting how both of them, if you like, controlled that narrative. And the Gilroy one, I think, is particularly interesting because I think we know Gavin had this whole thing about esprit de corps, nobody was bigger than the team and that kind of thing. But as you say, Bernard was a star, but Gilroy's attitude to him is really interesting, and the start of the piece on that is really interesting as well. He scored 2 goals against Westmeath, and I gave the big hands out gesture to the hill after one of them, and hopped on Darren McGee after he'd found the net as well, as if we'd scored to win the All-Ireland, when all we'd done was to rack up a score on a demoralised opponent. And Gilroy came after him for that, and that's really interesting as well. I think that was a thing. I think Gilroy has never really been given enough credit. Gavin, clearly a brilliant manager, but I think Gilroy also had moulded, that team that went on to be so successful, because he was the one who also, I think with Dermot Connolly as well, made guys really make the most of their talents and didn't let them just coast along on what they'd done before.
And the emotion of the system, isn't it amazing, David, that Jim Gavin, there's just no room for sentimentality. In 2013, Bernard Brogan was the star of the All-Ireland final against Mayo last year. It's about 5 in a row. It's not about what you've done, it's about what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely, John. It's unbelievable, really. And I think for us looking in from the outside, I don't know what Cliona thinks, but we've gotten to learn very little about the Dublin setup over the years. It's very tight-knit. And nothing gets out. I remember being MC at a Cheltenham preview night one night in the Sunnybank, and John Small was there. He's mad into racing, and I just brought him up for a chat, to chat about Cheltenham and what to be fancy. And I think they were playing Donegal in the second league match that weekend, and I just said, as you would, and you looking forward to the match against Donegal at the weekend? And he just walked back down to his seat. He didn't even answer me, and John's a lovely fella, and just did not want to talk about it at all. And he would talk about anything else, but the Dublin setup, absolutely not. And this is one of the first insights that I personally have got into the setup. And you get to learn a little bit about Jim Gavin in it as well. Obviously, you learn plenty about Bernard, but Jim, obviously, you get to know about that steel and that, there's no real sentiment when it comes to making these tough decisions. And even into their training session before that Mayo match, he talks about how Kevin McManaman took over the session because they were preparing for the match, and how the process psychologically and bringing in the sounds of the crowd and what it would sound like in the build-up to the game and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that stood out at me, John, was that it's all player-driven. And it's something that club teams have tried to do in recent years. Obviously, they've heard a little bit about this Dublin team and how the players have taken over everything at half-time. It's the players that try to sort out certain problems, and club teams have tried to bring that in, but it just doesn't really work, especially, maybe at the top level in club situations. But reading this from Bernard, especially at training, a lot of it seems to be player driven, and the players do take governance of an awful lot of things. And I thought that was interesting, the lead up to that Mayo game, just the levels they went to in preparation. It's incredible, really.
And how professional it is, an amateur game, how professional it is.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, you hear them. Sorry, you hear them talking, or he talks here about the 3 breaths. This thing that they use, I think they've adopted from the All Blacks. David's right. You often hear these things, and you'll have every club team in the country now trying to do this. But like, it's virtually, you have to look at everything that Dublin have. Their setup, where their players live, their finances, everything else. They are as close as you're going to get, I think, in everything that they do as to a professional team. For an amateur team, they're incredibly professional, and their lifestyles are incredibly professional. But again, their managers are extremely professional, and I always make that point. I think a lot of inter-county managers, even in the way they deal with the press, they think they do it professionally. But I always go back to, Gilroy before he took over Dublin. One of the things was he brought in a lot of the leading GA correspondents around the country and asked them, what is it that you're looking for? How are we going to manage this? Because he knew he was taking on a big job. And he always dealt very, very fairly with the press. But he sort of used them to train the young players in to do the press. You probably remember them, John. Those 7:30, 8 o'clock press conferences in the morning.
Which were continued by Jim Gavin into the Gibson, yeah?
Yeah. And they'd bring in a young player maybe every time to give him a bit of an experience. Just, a very professional way of dealing with teams. And everything they did was just impeccable, really was. But it's no coincidence, I think, that we're seeing this stuff. And we've seen other stuff come out even from Gary Keegan in the last few months. Since Jim Gavin stepped down, stuff is coming out now. But this book definitely, I think, is going to open the lid on stuff that was being done with Gavin's team.
Well, it should. That's what a great book should be about, isn't it? I'm also really interested in the matches, like 5 in a row, all those close matches that they had. And it's published tomorrow, Bernard Brogan, The Hill, with Kieran Shannon. We're all looking forward to reading it. So that's a good extract. David, do you want to pick up anything from the Irish-Finland previews and the Stephen Kenny the last few days and the kind of, I suppose, the fallout of the Bulgaria game? Not that there's much fallout. It was a pretty satisfactory start, a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some, obviously, inevitable really that there's some great pieces on Kenny and on his first match in charge, and starting off maybe with Eamon Sweeney in the Sunday Independent. I suppose with Eamon, you automatically think he's going to be negative. It's your first instinct. He's going to have a go at something. But he's turned full circle, and he is massively behind this Stephen Kenny operation. And, his piece is backed up by facts, obviously, with the possession Ireland had during the week. And, just the way he talks about Kenny, he really does believe in him and believes that he has the potential to bring Ireland to a place that they've never been, probably, certainly with the way they're playing. And there's a couple of lines in Eamon's piece that are quite interesting. He says about Adam Ida, he says, claims that Ida had a poor game are so removed from reality that illustrate the dangers of watching a game with a preconceived agenda in mind. You can see the attraction of the moral tale, a teenage debutant epitomising the innocence of Ireland's bold new era, running around on the grim realities of international football. But that's not what happened. The big Corkman's performance was more than respectable. For a 19-year-old, it was remarkable. Then again, Callum O'Dowda, easily Ireland's worst player on the night, got the Man of the Match award. So maybe it's not surprising Ida was underappreciated. And it's quite funny just to read the different things from Eamon about the team and how he saw something really, really positive. And that's generally the team. Eamon is probably the most positive of all the writers. There's plenty in the Sunday World from John Brennan about the game as well. And I thought there was one thing from Philip Quinn in the Mail that was... Quinner has a great way, I think, of describing people. And he says it's quite simple, but I think it's effective. He describes Stephen Kenny as the soft-spoken Dubliner, the soft-spoken Dubliner with the core of tungsten, has travelled a long way since his early days in the meat business. I thought that was nice, the soft-spoken Dubliner with the core of tungsten. And for me, judging Kenny early on, it was all about that decision at right back and whether he was going to play Matt Doherty or Seamus Coleman. And, that's mentioned in the pieces with Kenny as well. And, Philip says to Stephen, he says, so is Coleman still Kenny's captain? Without question, he replied, even though he's not playing, without doubt, he's still the captain. He's one of the great Irish captains and a terrific player. Matt Doherty has a rich vein of form, and sometimes an exceptional vein of form has to be rewarded. These are marginal decisions when you get two players in the position. Like, I personally don't think it was marginal at all. I think Matt Doherty had to play. He's been one of the best players in that right wing back position in the Premier League this season, and Coleman is just not the player he was. He might be a terrific captain and a terrific leader, but he's not. And for me, that was a big tick next to Stephen Kenny's name, that he was able to do that, make that big decision. And I thought Doherty did well as well, and I think that position is his now, to be honest.
Yeah, we got to take a break here, Cliona, so we'll come back with you and your kind of views on the Republic of Ireland's game against Bulgaria, but more so the actual what's in the papers about it today. It was interesting. Gary Breen is writing in The Sun about this, and like he's effectively, lasered in on this Coleman and Doherty thing. If Doherty plays to his strengths and attacks high, it leaves Shane Duffy's weakness exposed because he'll be turned. Doherty and Duffy's strengths do not complement each other. So that is what he's pinpointing as the issue. We'll speak to Stewie Byrne and Nathan Murphy a little bit later on. We got full commentary of that match, the Republic of Ireland against Finland in the Nations League, a 5 o'clock kick-off at Lansdowne Road. This is the Sunday paper review. Plenty more in the papers. Marcelo Bielsa, Neil Warnock, a Premier League preview, and also discussions around Gaelic games. So plenty to look forward to. Please stay tuned between 2 and 3 for the Sunday paper review with Cliona Foley and David Jennings. Right now, they've got to take a news break, and back on 53106 your text messages. Back after this.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. Sign up for News Talk Extra, our email newsletter straight to your inbox. newstalk.com/extra.
At Volkswagen Financial Services, our solutions are expertly engineered to put you in the driving seat. Choose the flexibility of PCP, low-cost HP finance, or the convenience of leasing. Add extras like servicing and maintenance plans. For Volkswagen, Audi, Skoda, Seat or Volkswagen commercial vehicles, discover financing options that match your needs and your budget. Talk to your local dealer or visit vwfs.ie/affordability. Volkswagen Financial Services. Affordability engineered for you. Finance provided by Volkswagen Financial Services Ireland. Subject to lending criteria. Terms and conditions apply.
Into sports.
20 yards out. Ursh to shoot. Don't shoot. Oh, what a goal for Fabinho. Wow.
And get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him. Yeah, no.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what would he do? He'd get a slap.
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
Want to advance your career in facilities management? Then talk to Portobello Institute. Choose an IWFM award or a BSc or MSc degree in facilities management and gain advanced entry to year 2 or 3 with a trade cert or relevant qualifications and experience. Affordable and accessible online study and small group lectures are now enrolling. So talk to an expert about our IWFM degree and master's courses in facilities management at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
Get even more value with weekly Super Savers at Lidl. Our large fresh Irish roaster chickens were €4.35, now only €4. Fresh Irish pork mince was €2.49, now just €2. And 2 kilos of white potatoes were €2.99, now half price at just €1.49. And make even more savings throughout the store by downloading the new Lidl Plus app. Lidl, more for you.
Screen Time with John Fardy.
On this week's Screen Time podcast, I talked to Jessie Buckley about working with Charlie Kaufman on I'm Thinking of Ending Things. We ask if Disney's new live-action Mulan is worth the moolah. Plus, Carl Henry on his favourite movie.
Screen Time with John Fardy.
Brought to you by Stella Cinemas.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now on newstalk.com or on the Newstalk app.
Get the latest 5G smartphones from free with Air Mobile. Choose between the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G or the Samsung Galaxy S20 5G. Enjoy no limits data, plus unlimited calls and texts from just $49.99 a month. And get everything you love, but better and faster on Ireland's largest 5G network. For more, go in store or visit air.ie. Unlimited allowances subject to fair use. Available on selected Air Mobile plans. For full terms, see air.ie.
Hi, PJ here from PH Ross. Having a space to call home is like having a sanctuary, somewhere to express our personality through design choices we make. At PH Ross, we love helping our customers create their dream bathroom, a space that complements their busy lifestyle and reflects their personality. Some would call it a design collaboration. We like to think it's the start of a beautiful friendship. If you're lucky enough to have a space to call home, talk to us at PH Ross on the Old Harbour Road or visit phross.ie. Our autumn sale is now on.
This place has borne witness to the birth and rebirth of our nation, to the triumphs and tribulations that have made us what we are today. This place is where our finest writers, thinkers, and entertainers have found their words read and their voices heard, and where countless generations have come to learn, to discover, to read, and be inspired. This place is Eason, Ireland's favourite bookseller since 1886, inspiring and engaging minds of all ages through the best of times, the worst of times, and as we face the next chapter together for all our times to come. So join us in store at your local Eason or online at easons.com. Eason, be inspired.
He once lost out to Leo, but what does the future hold for Simon Coveney? In this week's Sunday Independent, he talks exclusively to Hugh O'Connell. Plus, Andrea Cord talks movingly about family and her mother's legacy. In life, Alison Spittle opens up on sexism on the comedy circuit. And in sport, an exclusive extract from Bernard Brogan's autobiography on the day his frustrations with Jim Gavin boiled over. The Sunday Independent. Real stories worth paying for in print or subscribe at independent.ie.
At Harvey Norman, we've got the latest technology for heading off to college and an amazing cashback offer. Buy any computer or Apple Mac over $799 and we'll give you up to €300 cashback. Get the Microsoft Surface Pro 7 with powerful Intel Core i5 processor, 8GB RAM and 128GB SSD storage. Only $969 after cashback. Shop in-store or online at Harvey Norman for our best prices on must-have technology for heading off to college.
QuoteDevil.ie can save you money on your car insurance, van insurance or home insurance. Quote Devil Home Insurance is so easy. Get a quote in just 60 seconds and purchase cover in 3 minutes.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Quote Devil Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
On 106 to 108 FM, on newstalk.com, on smart speaker, and on the Newstalk app. This is Newstalk.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. The HSE says a more nuanced deal with private hospitals is being worked on in the event extra capacity is needed this winter. In March, the state took over private hospitals in anticipation of a major surge in COVID-19 admissions at a cost of €115 million per month. That deal ended in June with an arrangement the public system could draw down on services and capacity as needed. The HSE's Chief Clinical Officer, Dr. Colm Henry, says a new arrangement is being worked on.
Now we're looking at a more nuanced deal, negotiating individually hospitals, if you like, an insurance policy for a surge capacity we may need if we see big numbers of COVID-19 presenting, but also, and equally, if not more importantly, to help us in catching up on those waiting lists that are accrued during that close down period.
The UK's Foreign Secretary says this week is a moment of reckoning for a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU. Discussions are set to resume this week between Michel Barnier and his British counterpart David Frost, who's warned the UK will not blink first in negotiations. Differences remain on big issues like fishing rights, but Dominic Raab believes there's a potential for a deal.
This week is the moment of reckoning. There is a deal to be done, and we're only asking to be treated just as the EU would expect, or any other third country negotiating with the EU, or indeed any other country in relation to free trade negotiations. I don't think that sounds unreasonable. That's just plain common sense.
A police search is underway for a man suspected of carrying out a series of stabbings in Birmingham, which has left one man dead. 7 others have also been injured too seriously after it happened in the city centre last night. Officers say it was random and wasn't terror-related or a hate crime. And an Irish TikTok star says he's shocked and disappointed by the amount of online hate he's received since entering a content creator house in Dublin. Marty Guilfoyle and 9 other popular users moved into the Goat House earlier this month to collaborate, but the DJ has now left the project after being accused of predatory intentions on social media, and he's older than others in the house. He says the abuse was upsetting and his only intention was to promote his music.
It really started to get out of hand, where people were really hopping on this bandwagon of making, in inverted commas, jokes about, you know, me being with underage girls. And I got to the stage where I was like, hang on a minute, I've literally just signed a record deal. I have my broadcasting gig here in Ireland. This could really tarnish it. So I just made the decision just to leave.
It's 2 minutes past 2.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to the AA. For great value home insurance, go online to theaa.ie.
Cloudy with scattered showers today, some sunny spells this afternoon. Highest temperatures of 15 to 19 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball here on News Talk. John Duggan sitting in for Joe Malloy until 7 o'clock this afternoon. As well as listening to us on News Talk, you can watch us on our live streams for Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the new OTB Sports app for iOS and Android. Search OTB Sports in your app store now. It is the Sunday Paper Review with the presenter of Off the Bench here on Off the Ball, and the sports writer Cliona Foley, and the deputy editor of the Irish Racing Post, David Jennings. We were speaking to David just before the break about the Republic of Ireland and Bulgaria and today's game against Finland, which you can hear live on News Talk from 5 o'clock with Nathan Murphy and Stewie Byrne in the commentary box. Cliona, did you pick up anything from the papers about Ireland and Stephen Kenny in that?
Well, yeah, there's lots of opinion pieces, obviously, on that first game. And David was just saying that Eamon Sweeney was very positive. But one of the things that keeps being quoted is about the possession, about how much possession they had. But I think Philip Quinn makes a really good point, which he says, this thing of them having, 64% possession, twice more than they've had before. But he was saying it's one thing having 60% and completing 91% of your passes, but you don't, if you don't cash in on it. And that Aaron Connolly miss early on, when he went for a cross when he should probably crossed it back in. Like, if you've got an early goal in a game like that, it changes the whole personality of the game. Suddenly they're in charge. Bulgaria are going to have to change their taxes. So I think sometimes we make too much statistics, and Quitter makes a very good point as well. He says Stephen Kenny tends to build up the opposition both as a mark of respect and to dampen expectations about his own team's chances. That's a very, very clever thing to point out. Bulgaria were 59th in the world rankings and had won only one of their previous 14 games. That fact was bypassed in all the things that he gave out in the preview to the game. So I think that's really interesting, and he's making the same point about the game today as well. But somebody who's even tougher probably and really probably doesn't hold back is Tommy Conlon in the Sunday Independent. And this isn't for the faint-hearted really, because what he says is he's saying the new manager will have to be careful not to write checks that his players can't cash. We know how positive Kenny is about the young talent and all the rest, but he's saying they're not proven yet, and we shouldn't be rushing to expect too much. And he says what we have for the moment is not a new era, merely a new regime, and the new manager, same as the old manager, is dealing with what he says is the bang average material the Irish football's production line has delivered to them for over a generation. So he says we don't know yet. He's talking about Troy Parrott and Adam Ida and Michael Obafemi. He's saying we don't know yet how up the pyramid they can climb. And he's stressing that. So it's quite a strong piece. It's quite balanced at the end, because he says, look, you have to give everybody a chance. And he's saying Finland this evening will provide another early signpost on what is likely to be an arduous pilgrimage more than a walking holiday. So I think it's a pretty realistic piece as well.
Yeah, he says growing pains, isn't he? That's what he kind of mentions, Tommy Conlon, and that it's going to take a while, I think, for all this to bed down. Now, Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times, who was there in Bulgaria, and as I said to Stephen Doyle in the news round, sometimes you hear more when you're actually at the ground. Ireland's most vocal player by some distance was Darren Randolph, the goalkeeper, whose urgency echoed around the cavernous empty stadium. Stay high, stay high, he demanded of his defenders, but at the same time he was rightly concerned as Bulgaria looked to hit Ireland in the break with long diagonal balls. Still, Todor Nedelev and Spaz Delev were able to get in behind the Ireland defence, but spurned excellent chances in their first half. Some of the defensive weaknesses are hidden by the clubs playing three centre-halves, referring to Doherty and Enda Stevens. Look, David, it's going to take a while. I think there's a lot of even feeling our way out through the articles today that we're not going to get a finished product, and we're not going to have any kind of assessment on Stephen Kenny's reign for quite a while yet. The Slovakia game is really, really important next month, and that's what today is building for. It's to try and get a result in Slovakia.
Absolutely, and I think reading the piece in today's papers, like, a lot of the players are emphasising the fact that they're trying to do things, and they've only had a certain amount of time to deal with Kenny's new tactics. And I do think even that line that you read out from Darren Randolph is very interesting in Paul Rowan's piece in the Sunday Times. Like, stay high. Like, Randolph would be a goalkeeper that wouldn't be used to playing the Stephen Kenny style of football. And I even noticed it was very clear that he did want to play it short as often as possible. And I'd say in the vast majority of his games for Ireland, he's usually played it quite safe, and he's the type of goalkeeper that just keeps it simple and doesn't make too many mistakes. So I think that is interesting. And I always like to read these extracts from writers that have been at games when there is no crowds, because a lot of this vocal stuff we obviously don't hear. Excuse the pun, when there is crowds there. So it is interesting to read stuff like that from writers that are at the game. I know Jonathan Liu often refers to stuff that he hears at matches, and I just thought that was quite interesting from Randolph, saying stay high, stay high. He's obviously bought into the Stephen Kenny regime anyway.
Go on, Cliona. Yes.
John, as well as there's a really good picture in Neil O'Riordan's piece in The Sun. Did you see that picture, which I think is very telling as well? We're all talking about Adam Ida, but it's a picture of John Egan presenting Adam Ida with the Cork Schoolboys Player of the Year award. It's a fantastic picture, and it was 2015, and I think that's really interesting because it's so telling. You know, suddenly everybody's, you know, and he hasn't had that much club action even really starting, but everybody's talking about Ida as the next big thing. But he's very young, and I think we saw in that game the last day, you know, he was up against a huge defender who was all over him and not giving him a minute. He's a long way to go still. So I think that picture is brilliant just to put it into context. And sometimes those pictures of players in their youth, that's a picture I think that's probably going to pop up again in the future.
Yeah, I'll just try and get it here for a moment, because I remember there was an Adam Ida picture. I think he posted to his Instagram during the week when he was a little boy in a Little Ireland kit at the window with a little hammer, a little inflatable hammer, I think it was.
Little blow-up hammer.
That's right. It's quite a tender piece actually from Roy Curtis in the Sunday World today. About Paul McGrath. Paul McGrath's mother, Betty, very sadly passed away during the week, and we send our condolences to Paul and the rest of his family, and you know, our thoughts are with them. This is in the unimaginable commotion of Paul McGrath's darkest days. She was a point of calm, an unwavering beacon of love. Betty Loud, that gentle creature's beloved mother, was the sunshine in Paul's soul. Their story is one of tenderness and devotion, of overcoming unpromising odds. A life-affirming tale of a bond so intense and pure it could neither be wounded nor diluted by distance, spiteful prejudice, even by addiction. That beautiful, bone-deep connection unique to a mother and her child. Last November, days before Paul turned 60, I spent a blessed afternoon with him in Enniscorthy, a watery sun dapping winter light on the River Slaney, and he goes on to talk about his day with Paul and obviously his own relationship with his mother and then Betty passing this week.
John, when I die, I want Roy Curtis to write my eulogy, because he just has this. I've played golf with Roy many a time, and when he gets into this mode of you know, pieces like this, like they're real kind of tearjerkers, and he just has this way of describing emotion. And I'm sure you've read many of his tweets when he's wandering around Dublin and things. But a piece like this is just Roy Curtis. This is his bread and butter, and it's just beautiful. Like it's really lovely. I'd advise anybody to pick up the Sunday World today and read it, because it's just simplistic, but it's really, really nice.
Yeah, no, my best friend Johnny Lyons passed away. Roy wrote this amazing piece for the Irish Independent, and not one word was out of place. It was an amazing piece, so well done, Roy, on today's piece. Just on the Sunday World, David, Johnny Mercer's been speaking to John Brennan. Obviously, we got a big weekend next weekend in horse racing. We got the Champion Stakes, Leopardstown Saturday. We got the Curragh on Sunday as well. We got Ken Condon as a piece in the Irish Independent as well. So a lot to look forward to for racing fans over the next week.
Absolutely, John. This is, in flat racing terms, these are the biggest 2 days in Ireland coming up on Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, a lot different this year with COVID and the fact that it's behind closed doors. But there is two nice pieces in the papers. John has a piece with Johnny Murtagh, and Johnny is having the season of his life as a trainer. You know, was one of the best jockeys Ireland has ever produced, and he's starting to really, really cut the mustard at training. And you know, there's an interesting quote here from Johnny, who's talking about Irish Champions Weekend in previous years. You know, when he wasn't trained as many winners, when he didn't have as many good horses, he says, when it was on in those initial years, that's Irish Champions Weekend, I had no runners, so I used to be hosting tables in the restaurant of sponsors and perhaps interested owners. But I was always thinking to myself, I should be down there now in the pre-parade ring, saddling runners, not up here eating roast beef. So, you know, as his point was, you know, yes, he was training horses, but he wanted to be on the big stage. Johnny Murtagh is such a big personality. He really does need to be on the big stage, and it's a lovely piece with John where he kind of sums up Irish Champions Weekend in the right manner. This is massive for Irish racing. We have got Aidan O'Brien. Obviously, his two sons, Sonica and Joseph, are big trainers now as well, despite how young they are. And Irish racing is in, despite all the problems with COVID and everything, Irish racing is in a really strong place, and these 2 days in Leopardstown and the Curragh the weekend are massive. And I just wanted to mention that Ken Condon has a piece with Darragh Cruther in the Sunday Independent, and he starts it off, and I think he sums it up perfectly, because anybody that knows Ken will say he is the absolute gentleman of the game. He is so nice. He says the high-performance environment is an unforgiving one, with so many clawing for the next rung of the ladder, of fighting on their backs to maintain their current status. Bitterness and jealousy is rife. Racing is not immune to the human condition, but it doesn't seem that anyone ever has a bad word to say about Ken Condon. And he reminds me a little bit of Sean Boylan in that I've never heard, apart from Tommy Padman's piece a few weeks ago, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about Sean Boylan. And in racing terms, obviously he's not successful, but he's a similar type of character. Just a good word to say about everybody. And even when you're trying to bring up something negative, to try and get a bit of negativity out of it, he somehow manages to turn it into a positive. And Darragh speaks about that in the piece about Romanised. One of the star horses should have been awarded a race in France when he was interfered with by Circus Maxis, and he didn't get it. And Darragh's trying to get that out of him, and yet he still comes across as this gentleman, and he just accepts the result. There's no point in crying over spilt milk, and it's a lovely read, and Darragh does get the best out of him. So nice read with Ken Condon in the Sun Independent.
Well, I think with Tommy Conlon, just on that, I think that it's not about Sean Boylan. I think it was about the style of his teams and just questioning the style of some of his teams. So I don't think it was actually about Sean the man. But one thing was interesting I found today, Cliona, was Munster and the reaction from Neil Francis and from Peter O'Reilly and from Rory Keane about Munster. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration, disappointment, anger possibly in Munster among their fans or supporters at the moment, because they just keep on going to the precipice of doing something, and then it just always seems to stop at the semi-final stage, and it's just extremely frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the frustration was seen on the Munster players' faces at the end of that match the last day, on Friday night, was just, said everything that needs to be said. But yet their fans and everybody else at home was looking at them, and this is what the papers reflect today, which was, where was the second idea? What else do you have apart from a box kick? Why are we constantly staying with the box kick? And I was really interested in a few pieces today, particularly because when you watch the match, you were saying Munster box kicking all the time. I wonder what the stats are. But in fact, is it in the Sunday Times? I think that actually Peter O'Reilly actually gives the stats, which is actually really good. That's the kind of journalism you always want to see, is somebody who gives the stats. In this case, sometimes stats are relevant. And interestingly enough, he says he's gone through the tape and he can verify that Conor Murray launched 14 bombs off the base of the line at Maul Rucker Scrum. On only 3 occasions did this have the desired effect of either gaining territory or regaining. Leinster, between him, Luke McGrath and Jamison Gibson Park kicked 13 times. So there was only one difference, but he does make the point that only twice did they get the ball back, although in the final quarter when they were 10 points ahead, those kicks were more for length and contest. Now, what I'd also like to have seen there was what other kicking did Murray do in comparison to Sexton, because it's the tactical kicking that seems to be absent as well. Like, do they only have one option? So people come in fairly strong on Munster today, and I have to say Van Gran is the one who is getting most of the questions asked. Peter O'Reilly's piece, "Mindless Munster paid the price for negative tactics," is his headline. The Sunday Indo is far more pointed. Neil Francis, as is his form, doesn't ever hold back. And his headline is mediocrity of Munster down to Van Gran. And he's really saying that, if they don't have alternative tactics, you go back to the head coach. Now people have also, talked at the beginning of the season of how things have changed. That Larkham had come in, and that and he makes that point. You have Stephen Larkham on your coaching roster, and you're kicking the ball away. Why is that? And I noticed even in the post-match, you saw former Irish players, Gordon Darcy, Stringer, were both saying, what's happened there? Are players on the pitch not making a decision, saying this isn't working? And I think that's interesting. It's like, even in rugby at half-time, or do you change on the pitch, or who changes the tactics, or who has the power here to change tactics? But there's a lot of them making this point. I think Rory Keane's piece is really good in the Mail on Sunday, because he uses some really, really good short phrases, I think, to capture the situation that's probably frustrating Munster and particularly their fans at the moment. And he says the difference is that one team, Leinster, he says, their setup is defined by ambition. And he says the other team, which is Munster, their setup is defined by fear. I think it's a really, really good piece. Rory Keane's piece is excellent. And again, he refers to the fact that, Leinster constantly adapt and evolve, and Munster don't appear to have evolved. And he also says that Larkham must be feeling, that Van Gran must be feeling pressure now in terms of, I think he's a year to go in his contract.
Was Neil Francis' piece a bit harsh? It's obvious Van Gran has taken the team as far as he can. He doesn't hold back. He doesn't pull any punches, Neil Francis, effectively saying that Van Gran is the reason why Munster are in where they are. And I was laughing at the Peter Riley piece when I read it, it was still a disgrace to the sport, the match of the night. I was laughing at that bit. But the Van Gran piece I thought was pretty... there was no...
He's basically saying he's blaming Van Gran on it, definitely. Now, you would say they've got injuries. He says the chasm between the two sides is purely down to coaching, not just on Friday, but every match since the 2009 semi-final in Croke Park. Again, he doesn't hold back. I'm not so sure, but you do have to say they've got injuries at the moment. And he says, I looked at Munster's roster before the rugby started, and I thought that's a very decent squad. Injuries don't come into the equation. I might respectfully suggest that James Ryan, Tyke Furlong and Dan Levy are bigger losses to Leinster than Jan Klein, Carberry and Sinemer to Munster. But look, at the end he does say Munster have many great qualities, and if these are harnessed appropriately, they would win again, as opposed to being just a side that are difficult to beat. I think one of them makes the point that Munster's best attacking options are 11 to 14, and we just didn't see them at all last week. And I think everybody was feeling look, the high ball worked against Leinster the first day. It's not working tonight, and even in the conditions, and as you say, they're saying what a bad match it was. Even in those conditions, Leinster were more expansive, and that this is the constant query now: is where are Munster going if they don't appear to have more to their game than just the high bombs. So there's plenty of that in the papers today. There's no shortage of that. 2 days later, I suppose the one you'd nearly like to see more on, we'll probably see in tomorrow's papers, is Ian Madigan coming off the bench and Ulster's heroics yesterday, and that was a fantastic win for them and sets up a great All-Irish final as well.
Yeah, Brendan Fanning had a nice piece on it, I think, today about Ian Madigan. It's hard, obviously, as you know yourself, to write.
Oh yeah, live.
Just talking about just going through Madigan's two magic touches made Edinburgh's title hopes disappear, talking about Marcel Coetzee, Eric Sullivan and Tom O'Toole in the pack, Alan O'Connor, Sam Carter, Albie Matthewson came off the bench, picked up the tempo. Stockdale was outstanding. That is against Leinster, only adds to the intrigue, of course, with Madigan, the fact that he used to be a Leinster player. So, look, it was his night, and I think it's well reflected in the Sunday Times. It's on their front page. I suppose the elephant in the room, that it's a bit of a strange one, David, that we're 6 days away from a new Premier League season, and I'm not getting any of the razzmatazz. I don't know, we have got to maybe build it up here in the Sunday paper review about the Premier League's return, but it's very low key, and obviously low key because it's been just over 40 days since the last season was completed. But the Sunday Times has got a big spread on it today. There's a few pullouts as well.
Yeah, it's a strange situation, I suppose, for sports editors, in that usually this day a week, the Sunday before the Premier League kicks off, it's massive. It's pullouts. It's focusing in on each team. But because it's such a short space of time, I'd say they didn't really know what to do. I'd say they're in a strange situation. But there are some very interesting pieces, and not surprisingly, Marcelo Bielsa. There's a couple of very interesting pieces on him. There's a 2-page special report in the Mail on Sunday with Rob Draper, Tim Rich, and Ariel Cookie or Con. It's a hard one to pronounce, but just reading some of the extracts from these various pieces on Bielsa, he is going to basically be almost the story of the Premier League this season. We obviously didn't see a great deal of him in the Championship. We've seen bits and pieces, but when he does come into the Premier League, it's going to be emphasised so much more. And in this special report in the Mail on Sunday, there's a couple of parts that caught my eye. They say, for a man who refuses to grant one-on-one interviews, says he can't speak English and struggles to look inquisitors in the eye. His charismatic appeal may seem baffling, but Bielsa does connect, and I think that sums it up really. He's this bizarre character that he's all energy, and he's fascinating in interviews, and everything about him is interesting. And Louise Taylor has a piece in the Sunday Independent on Bielsa as well, and she says the unconventionality and determined unorthodoxy of Bielsa's methods dictates that the top flight should be braced for similarly idiosyncratic moments on its pitches this season. And he is going to be fascinating to follow. He really is. I don't know if you saw, and both pieces mention about this. I don't know if you saw when they got promoted, when West Brom didn't win their game, all the people waiting outside his house, and Louise starts off her piece about that, and he's probably the only manager definitely the only manager in the Premier League this season who doesn't live behind big gates and in a big house. She says the small crowd gathered outside Marcelo Bielsa's modest terraced home counted down the minutes until the door opened, and the man set to re-energise this season's Premier League emerged into an overcast July evening. Eventually their patience was rewarded. Suddenly a beaming Bielsa was no longer inside his one-bedroom flat above a sweet shop, but down in its stone-walled backyard, engaging elbow bumps and posing for selfies with his adoring neighbours in the Yorkshire market town of Wetherby. And how lovely is that for a manager to be living in a one-bedroom flat above a sweet shop? That I thought was really, really nice to hear. And I certainly will be fascinated to follow Bielsa this season. And it's great to have Leeds back in the Premier League. They deserve to be there. I think it's 16 years since they were there.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised to see so much on Leeds in the Sunday papers, because I think there's still quite a few fans around the place, John.
Big time. In Ireland especially, given
It's in Ireland, isn't there? Yeah, there is, yeah. Do you think that Jim Gavin or anybody would have watched a match from a bucket, John? There's a great piece on
it's funny, isn't it?
Matches from a bucket.
Yeah, they asked him why he watches matches from the bucket, and he says, it's just a bucket, I've nothing to add, it's a comfortable bucket.
Yeah,
the mystery.
I think it's really interesting with Bielsa is that, the British Premiership and football in general, and a lot of sports in general now, we're obsessed with managers more than players. We're obsessed with managers. These are the intriguing characters, and for some reason, the cult of the manager is huge now. Bielsa appears to be somebody who doesn't want to engage in that, and yet you know everything that you read in these pieces is he's going to be dragged into it, or certainly they're going to concentrate on him hugely. And I mean, in comparison to that example that David gave, the two pieces, Louise Taylor's very good, and so is the one in the Mail is really good. But they talk about how when he was in charge of Newell's Old Boys, when fans turned up at his door and they weren't happy, they were demanding a resignation for a 6-0 loss. He arrived at what he says was a live hand grenade. If you don't go now, I will pull the pin, he threatened. And that probably is where the original name of El Loco, as the nickname is, first came from. But he is a fascinating character. But I always think this thing of making managers into these sort of we stereotype them. The whole thing about Klinsmann, driving the Beetle and Man of the People and all that. You know what I mean? Sometimes that turns out to be rubbish. And what I like about that piece in the Mail is that the question is Leeds boss Marco Bielsa the coach's coach, or just a man with unbeatable PR, and it's actually it asks some really good questions in that, how come we know so much about this guy who, says he doesn't, do any media and all that kind of stuff, and is he as good as he says? And obviously he has the imprimatur of so many famous managers or brilliant managers who are in the Premiership at the moment, and young managers that came through his hands. But it is going to be fascinating to watch. And there's a lovely piece as well. It was the Sunday Times is a really good piece with Calvin Phillips, who they call the Yorkshire Pirlo, which I think is lovely. And he talks about Bielsa's influence on him and how he's affected him. But it's interesting to note Phillips is the first Leeds player to make the English squad since Alan Smith in 2004. So, and I have friends who are Leeds fans. I think everybody's fascinated to see how they'll get on.
And Liverpool on the first day.
Actually, Tina, for when he got the call up, Bielsa called him in to give him a gift. You probably read this. I think it's in the Mail. And it was one of Bielsa's 70s Newell's Old Boys shirts. It was one worn by Bielsa in his brief professional career at the iconic Argentine club for whom he played 25 games, the peak of his professional playing career. And Phillips actually says in the piece that he was going to give his jersey. He's going to give his jersey if he does come on in the match. He's going to give his jersey to Bielsa. And I think that shows the bond that they have. And the piece with Calvin Phillips is quite interesting. And one line that really shocked me was, he says, this was Phillips talking about Bielsa, he said, Bielsa videos every minute of every single training session and will just tell us what we need to do in specific moments. He's obsessed with making all the players that he's got the best players that he can. Imagine videoing every single moment of every single training session and probably watching it as well. That shows a man absolutely obsessed with football.
Yeah, and it is a really good piece in the Mail as well. Yeah, Bielsa, like, obviously he's got Pep Guardiola's, as you say, Cliona imprimatur, and like, he has won 3 titles in Argentina, Newell's and Vélez Sarsfield. The game is, very exciting. It's 100 miles an hour, it's pressing. But it was a failure at the 2002 World Cup with Argentina. They didn't even get out of the group. I think with Leeds, they've been starved just as much as we've been starved in Ireland with Stephen Kenny. We're hoping so much that he does well, and I don't think there's going to be much criticism of Stephen Kenny in the next while. I think he'll be given a lot of leeway, and hopefully the results will follow as they should. But with Leeds, I think they're such a big club, and they've been starved of the big time, and Bielsa's brought them to the big time. So automatically he's become a man of the people, and hopefully for them that he'll be able to bring his methods to the top flight. They seem to have a good ownership there now after many periods of turbulence. And what we'll do after the break is we'll look ahead to the Premier League season a bit further and talk about Neil Warnock, who's also profiled in the Sunday papers, and also talk about a couple of GA stories. 10 years since Lara Corbett was a hat-trick hero at Croke Park, and also Pierce Hanley. I thought there was a good piece as well about him, given he's hung up his AFL boots. So the Sunday paper review, Cliona Foley and David Jennings off the ball here on News Talk. Don't go away, back after the short break.
The Sunday papers on Off the Ball. News Talk Breakfast with Ciara Kelly and Shane Coleman.
Shane, what's your view? You're a man. Would you ever go on to the likes of OnlyFans?
I wouldn't. And look, if people want to do it, grand, it's a free country. But please, spare me the empowerment cliches. And it is just a cliche.
I don't think it's entirely cliched. These are women who are saying, do you know what? If I work in porn, if I work in sex work, there's probably a man somewhere taking a slice of this money. I can put up a picture of me, I get the money, and I'm taking back control.
News Talk Breakfast with Ciara Kelly and Shane Coleman.
In association with AIR.
Weekday mornings at 7 on News Talk.
At National College of Ireland, our students are living proof that studying here can help boost your career.
NCI is absolutely a welcoming place. People from all walks of life come here, and everyone is treated the same.
It gives you an opportunity to step back into learning and to make a real change in your life. I think that NCI gave me a real pathway to success.
Yeah, I'd recommend NCI because of its commitment to helping students progress their careers. Yes, I'm living proof that NCI is the best career move you can make.
Prove to yourself what you can do with our wide range of full and part-time courses at National College of Ireland. Call 1850 221 721 or visit ncirl.ie.
Sharon Niviolan here. National Hospice fundraising efforts have been severely affected by COVID-19. Please support your local hospice by hosting a socially distanced or virtual coffee morning for Hospice Coffee Morning Together with Bewley's on Thursday, 24th of September. Visit hospicecoffeemorning.ie or call 1890 998 995.
Stay connected with totally unlimited broadband from AIR for just $29.99 a month for 6 months. Sign up today and keep the whole family entertained with amazing content from Amazon Prime Video on us for a whole year. Plus, you'll get the AIR Sport Pack free. For more on this amazing offer, why not drop into one of our stores or visit air.ie. AIR, let's make possible. New customers only. $29.99 a month for 6 months. $49.99 a month thereafter. 12-month contract subject to availability. Bundle activation fee may apply. Full details and terms see air.ie/Prime Video.
We all need to know the signs of COVID-19 and what to do if we feel sick. So if you have a cough, fever, breathing difficulties, or experience changes in your sense of taste or smell, it might mean you have COVID-19 and you could pass it on to others. If you have any symptoms, self-isolate to protect others and phone your GP for a free coronavirus consultation. If you need a COVID-19 test, that's free too. And if you don't, you'll feel better for having protected others. Because COVID-19 is still a problem, and we're all the answer. From the HSE.
Check this out. Super Value's better than half price sale is now on. Selected Kellogg's breakfast cereals, better than half price. Personal bio and non-bio powder, 40 wash, better than half price. Bird's Eye fish fingers, 20 pack, better than half price. And buy any 6 wines and save an additional €10 in our French wine sale. It's got to be Super Value. Enjoy alcohol responsibly.
Mega laptop sale now on at Curry's PC World. Save €120 on the HP Pavilion 14-inch laptop with 256GB SSD storage, now just $539. Or get the HP Pavilion 14-inch 2-in-1 laptop with Intel Core i3 processor, now just $589. Save €100. Get in store or online now.
Missing the buzz of live SSE Airtricity League games? Then we'll bring the greatest league in the world live to you. Get your Watch LOI half-season pass now and stream the remaining crucial games in the SSE Airtricity League season live or on demand, at home, on the go, wherever you are. The Watch LOI half-season pass. Sign up now and watch over 50 games for just €39. Go to watchloi.ie.
The time is right to add some extraordinary with Galway International Arts Festival's Autumn Edition. Indoors and outdoors, in person and online, all with your safety in mind. However you choose to join us, this Autumn Edition has got you covered with a wide range of events, including one of the largest outdoor installations ever seen in Ireland. Now on in Galway. See giaf.ie for details. Supported by the Arts Council, Fáilte Ireland, Galway 2020, NUI Galway and Flowgas.
Psychology, performance analysis, sports therapy and coaching all contribute to elite performance in sport. At Portobello Institute, we offer full-time and blended learning honours degrees in each of these sporting disciplines. Affordable and accessible online study, small group lectures and practicals are now enrolling at Portobello Institute. So talk to an expert about our full-time and blended learning sports degree courses at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball here on News Talk. John Duggan sitting in for Joe Malloy until 7 o'clock. As well as listening to us on News Talk, you can watch us on our live streams for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the new OTB Sports app for iOS and Android. Search OTB Sports in your app store. It's the Sunday Paper Review with the presenter of Off the Bench and sports writer Cliona Foley and the deputy editor of the Irish Racing Post, David Jennings. A lot of good GA writing always in the Sunday Papers. Cliona, anything that you picked out that you like?
Dennis Walsh has a lovely piece with Lara Corbett on yesterday, actually. I think it was the 10th anniversary of his famous All-Ireland hat-trick. And a couple of people did it over the weekend, but I think Dennis, as always, does it beautifully. And just the language in it and just everything about it is lovely. And talking about his relationship with Eamon, Eamon O'Shea, the coach, just how unique that relationship was. It's very hard to put into words, but Eamon O'Shea had this thing where he had this thing of making players play in the flow. But Dennis talks about how few balls that Lara Corbett wasted in that actual match and how efficient he was and how incredible that his performance was in that game. It's a lovely piece.
Yeah,
there's a few great phrases in it, isn't there?
There are, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I just remember Lara speaking to him at the time. He was very intense, even after the games, and he was so in the zone. And obviously that hat trick in, just about Eamon O'Shea wanting tips attack to flow. He wanted them to be bold and to fashion goals from bits and pieces of opening. So he was coaching under Liam Sheedy, and the quote from Lara is, "At the place where you need your coach, your manager to trust you most is in Croke Park." Corbett says players are sensitive people. The day of bigger matches, you'll smell fear off your opponent, but you'll also smell it off your manager too, or the guy giving you the game plan. There was never fear in Eamon's eyes, and it's a lovely piece from Lara 10 years on,
That great phrase that this is what brilliant writing is as well. I mean, it's a great story, and it's, those reminiscence pieces are lovely, but there's a line that he says, Corbett's performance in the 20 final was extraordinary. It was a monument to thrift. Every penny of possession was inflated to £1. How many times were you on the ball in the game, Lara? I'm going to say 5, 7. Corbett's opening goal after 10 minutes was his only possession in the first half. I mean, that's beautiful writing, and just, that's just so good, I think. And it's a lovely piece.
The same writer, Dennis Walsh, writes a very interesting piece. I think is worthy of examining and discussing. Split season in neither review. Proposal may not be the cure-all it has been so far, made to appear. This is about having the inter-county season between, say, February and July, and then the club season for the rest of the year. How to achieve that fine balance hasn't even been discussed. Maybe a split season will eliminate some corrosive old habits. Maybe club players will accept the threat of their season ending in August. Maybe the GA will overcome their massive loss of promotional capital from a sawn-off inter-county calendar. Maybe the split season is the big solution. Maybe, but let's have a serious debate first. It makes a very good point about the fact that club players might have their championships done in August, September. What are they going to do the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think this is a brilliant piece, because I'm one of these people who's guilty of saying, oh, split the season, this is a great idea, but, you know, maybe not thinking it through. And he really has done a great job here. And it's funny what you were saying about, you know, the relief of with Stephen Kenny coming in, the relief of the Premiership coming back. One of the pull-out quotes on this is how much of our judgment has been clouded by our relief that the games have finally gone ahead recently, you know, and, you know, are we thinking this out? I thought this was a really, really excellent piece. He's saying in split season, you know, the time available for clubs, first of all, that's not inexhaustible. And secondly, as you say, you know, if counties persist with the same format, there's a lot of players who are going to be out of championship, out of games very early. If the All-Irelands are finished by July and your club gets knocked out early, and you could again go back to the old problem, John, which we talk about a lot, is players going off to America, you know, or do you wait? The old thing used to be you wait for the players to come back. He exercised a lot of the ongoing problems. I looked at it, I thought, in a really intelligent way. He says there's been more compression in the inter-county season over the past 3 years than at any other time in the history of the GAA, but we still have the ongoing problem, you know. So he's saying let's have a proper debate about this. Let's not all rush to think this is the great solution.
And there's a couple of other pieces, David, you've been looking at in the GA world.
Yeah, I thought the piece by Michael Foley in the Sunday Times was quite interesting, John. The headline is "Training Like Never Before," and he actually speaks to Colm Nally, who's one of the coaches with Meath at the moment, and how tough it is for coaches nowadays, this year in particular, to come up with new ways of training, especially in this condensed season. And Nally says basically the tight schedule will also impact on rookie management teams feeling their way through a long last winter. And Nally says, for managers in their first year, this will feel like their second year coming back. They might have done a little earlier in the year, but not spent a lot of time on game plans. A lot of the focus will be on skill sets, hard work and attitude. There's not a lot of time to work on tactical aspects. That all might make the games a tad slower because the fitness work isn't there. And Colm Nally is one of the coaches with Meath at the moment with Andy McEntee. He's a real thinker. He's written 2 books, and you've probably seen some of his videos on social media about different aspects of training. And I remember actually my local club is Dunderry, and we played St. Columkills in the intermediate final. I think it was 3 years ago. And the first game was a draw, and the second game went to a replay, and St. Columkills won. And when they won the game, one of their players, I'm a goalkeeper, and one of their players came up to me after the game, and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "Why do you bring out 2 tees to kick out the ball?" He said, "We've analysed this in training and we can't figure it out." He said, "You use a brush tee and a cone." And he said, "Is it when you put one down one side, do you kick it one side? And if you use the other one, do you kick it to your left? Or what's the theory behind it?" And he was a bit bemused when I told him the only reason I bring 2 out is if it's a windy day, sometimes it falls off the brush tee, so I have to use the other one, and I don't want to look like an idiot going back into the goals. And I think that's the level that managers are at the minute. Colm Nally, who's a Meath coach, they went into that level of studying other teams, and that's the Meath Intermediate Championship. So that's the level that we're at now with Gaelic games, John.
I wonder is that where Tommy Rooney is playing, our producer of OTB AM here. And it's funny, it was back even to the Bernard Brogan discussion at the top of the paper review, Cliona, about professionalism and like the lengths that counties go to achieve in any sphere of the GAA. And I suppose there's a little bit on the fly at the moment with coaches and managers, given the fact that we've never been in this situation before where we've got a season for 2 months.
Yeah, and I thought it was, as David said, it's an interesting angle to take, which is we're all talking about the players and how are the players feeling, but actually how are coaches going to take them back? What are the sort of psychological, even, you know, ways that you're going to work with players? If if you're working with them on Zoom for so long, you have them back in training, you know, you're able to do a bit, you know, where are you going now? It is an interesting angle, and he talked to more than Nally. He talked to a few players in that, didn't he, as well, David? So he talked to a few people involved in coaching different counties, Tip as well, a few others, just to get that feel to say, this is going to be, it's the argument everybody's making is are we going to see a different kind of football and hurling? Will this suit some teams? Will winter hurling or winter football suit some teams better? What kind of an All-Ireland season is this going to be? Everybody's delighted it's coming back, but I think we don't know an awful lot about it. And I think that's really fascinating. Again, Colin O'Rourke has an interesting piece as well today, again arguing about why have we not, why are they still being so strict about people watching games or going to games when, for example, yesterday, I think, wasn't there a rugby game back in England? There was
That's right, Harlequins, yeah.
Harlequins, Quins had I think it was 2,700 spectators and then maybe another couple of hundred or whatever. This argument of why are they being so strict on that? Because it is a factor that's raised in a few articles today, and Colin O'Rourke is very strong in it again. He's saying, this draconian spectator ban, why are we having it? And what is an All-Ireland going to look like without spectators? It's hard to even conceive what that's going to be like, and what's that going to be like for players. And also this point about what's going to happen if an inter-county player tests positive. Aidan O'Shea raised it during the week as well, or Aidan O'Mahony rather raised it during the week as well, talking about there's going to have to be very strict guidelines here about what happens. And what if, somebody is test positive the night before a match? Like, all the papers today are saying, yes, the championship is going to go ahead. But the question, I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered in how things are going to be handled, and even, disciplinary-wise, what's going to happen. Aidan O'Mahony raised the spectre of managers saying, listen, we'll say nothing, we'll get through the game, and then we'll get you tested next week. Not saying that'll happen, but raising the possibility. So, it's a huge unknown, and it must be as big an unknown for coaches and medics as it is for players.
The second half of Colin O'Rourke's column is worth a read as well, because he's delving into the past versus present argument, whether the games of yesteryear were as good as the games now. And he picks out, I think it's 2000. He goes back to 2005 in the meeting of Tyrone and Armagh. And he says the three meetings of Tyrone and Armagh in 2005 were really epic struggles for supremacy in Ulster and for the whole country. It was not all wine and roses. There were plenty of nasty incidents, and there were individual players who exhibited a mean streak, exactly the same as every successful side. Yet there were fantastic individual footballers on view, and most of the time there were great manly contests. The popularity of the games meant that Ulster finals were played to full houses in Croke Park. Things have changed a lot in Ulster football since then. They are no longer dominant, and the support has drifted. And he's very, very complimentary about that Tyrone team of that era. And he says, Tyrone had men like Joe McMahon, Philip Jordan, Sean Kavanagh, Enda McGinley, and up front there was absolute quality with Brian McGuigan, Owen Mulligan, Stephen O'Neill, Peter Canavan and Brian Dooher. And he says there has hardly been a better forward line in Croke Park before or since. And I thought that was quite an interesting quote, because I think if you ask people, who is the best forward line in the last 30, 40 years that have played in Croke Park, not too many would pick out the 2005 Tyrone team. They might say, yeah, they were a good team, but I don't think it would be the first team you think of. So it's interesting that Colin has pinpointed that forward unit as possibly the best that has played in Croke Park in the modern era. I was certainly surprised. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I was surprised, and it's an interesting point.
Yeah, I suppose the Dublin, you can't argue with what Dublin done the last 5 years, and maybe that was a forward unit of 6, and it was a forward unit of players like Jack McCaffrey coming through. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting point, and they were brilliant matches. Like, you can't argue with Tyrone winning 3 All-Irelands between 2003 and 2008, and they were incredible games.
The Pat Spillane, just to shock
viewers.
I
read that.
Did you see that one, John?
Yeah.
the man who christened Puke football puts his hands up today and says that the Trilly Killie match that he watched last week had brilliant football in it. So he's not completely down on Tyrone football, but he's also in the Sunday World today asking again is what's the story with not allowing people back to surely we can have small crowds at matches, especially, as I said, given that we're seeing people returning to matches elsewhere and in a controlled fashion. And even, David, as you know, even the notion that jockeys now can travel for Grade 1 races and come into the country and not have to, do the same kind of quarantine as everybody else. These questions, they are relevant. Like, it is really frustrating GA people at this stage.
You probably see it as well, Cliona. The impact that it's having on, I would say, older members of clubs is staggering. Our club were knocked out of the championship last week, and again it was a game behind closed doors, and there's people that have never missed a match for my club, maybe 50, 60 years, that like, while to us it's only a match, and you know, if you win, great, if you don't, it's disappointing. To them, this is their life. This is all they have to talk about. This is what they meet up with people to talk about, most of the time giving out about team selections or why is this fella playing, but this is their lives, and we are taking it away from them at the moment. And I don't think in Croke Park they realise the extent of the damage. Yes, you can talk about mental health with young people and how we need to be playing the games, but I also think mental health with older people as well, and it is very, very frustrating for them. I don't think we've made enough of that, and what impact it's having on them, because I know from my own club, it's killing a lot of people. It really is, and the sooner the better those club stalwarts are able to get back and watch their club in action, the better, and I really hope it's in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, Croke Park can't do anything, though. That's the thing. Their hands are tied by the government.
It's not Croke Park is at fault here. It's Neffet are the ones who are being so strict on this. And puzzling, you know, given what we're seeing happening around the world. It is a bit puzzling, I have to say.
Well, Joe Brawley's writing about that today. Like, the games in the pubs, particularly the small rural pubs, are the lifeline for elderly folk. They can go down to the pitch of an evening to plug into the world, watch a hurling match, have a chat with an old friend, have some vital social contact, and generally feel alive for an hour. Then maybe a pint or two at the local bar where there might be 10 or 11 regulars. We're going to see on the middle of the month what they're going to do about this, and I think that we got to do better as a country, just in terms of how we manage this, because I think we just got to live with this for a while, and just, like, you know, maybe just think a little bit differently about how we're managing this, and can we find a safe way of doing this? But I don't think for the inter-county season it will be there in time for an inter-county season to take place. Interesting that Darren Hughes does an interview with Michael Clifford or Micheál Clifford in the Irish Daily Mail, and he says, personally, it wouldn't annoy me. I couldn't tell you at any given time if there's 100 there or 10,000. This is regarding crowds or people at matches. But I do think, yeah, there is a fabric piece to this, isn't there, David, that you're talking about, which is not just about whether the game is on or whether the game is off. I think it'll be great. I think by the time matches come onto television, there'll be such a novelty about it. People will love to. I think the TV figures are going to go through the roof for the championship. But like beyond 2020, I do think we need to find some kind of way of safely managing this.
Yeah.
Go on ahead, Cliona.
Yeah, no, I mean, David Brady's work as well, and it's been widely shown and off the ball, but like he's contact with older people and just, you know, to understand what it means to them, you know, to chat about the games and to go to Archie's to get to games, or even somebody to call around and talk to them or phone them, as I said, and talk about the games, just shows the place that it is. And I know people say, you know, soccer is a bigger sport in Ireland, but the reality is, I think the GAA is in every rural, or so many rural communities, you know, that it is the focal point of those communities, and the game is so important to so many people. So, you know, you can't argue with statistics and all the rest, but it just seems to me that elsewhere we've seen cricket crowds come back. In England, we've seen, you know, limited crowds come back to sporting events, and you start to wonder, when is it going to happen here, and why are they being so strict on it, you know, within reason.
Yeah, we've got about 3 minutes to go, guys. Just to mention the nice piece from Eamon Sweeney on Pierce Hanley. From Ballahadreen to Brisbane, Hanley built a successful career against the odds. Talk about the AFL, Australian Football League's average home attendance, 35,000. Dwarfing that of the Big Bash 2020 Cricket League, Super Rugby, National Rugby League. It'd be fascinating to see him return to action with the county, for whom he appeared in the 2005 All-Ireland minor final alongside Chris Barrett, Tom Parsons, Ger Cafferty and Seamus O'Shea. But for the moment, Pierce Hanley deserves a breather. He's done Ballahadreen proud. Well worth saying that he did such a great stint there, didn't he, in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, because not many Irish players have made it down there, and he did.
Yeah, and I'll be a bit of a hypocrite here, because I didn't pick Zach Toohey on Laois's Mount Rushmore and he played his 200th game this weekend. So I'm still in trouble for that one. But this is lovely to see Pierce, because you do think, how hard is it for them to go down there, not only to learn a new sport, but also to be an outsider. Do you know what I mean? Because Aussie rules and the Aussies are very proud of that game, and it's their game. And I just think to make it in that game must be extremely difficult.
And just David, briefly, I think the Premier League coming back, there's a good preview section in the Sunday Times. There's a good piece on Neil Warnock, which we're meant to touch on, but we won't. We should say to listeners, have a look at that in the Irish Daily Mail. Anything that you should recommend for us when we go off air with this, what people should look at?
Yeah, I think, definitely, through the papers, there's various little sections and little nuggets. But I do think that interview with Neil Warnock, Oliver Holt interviews him, and he's an absolute fascinating character. He's 72 later this year, and he actually delves into some things that we never heard about Warnock, about how he was released from Chesterfield, his first club, and how a friend of his rang him to say, "Oh, sorry, Neil, I heard you were let go," and he didn't actually know, and he had to let on, and he says, it's just one of those things, blah, 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 put the phone down and absolutely cried his eyes out. And he said he read about it in the Derbyshire Times the following morning, I think, and the manager hadn't even told him that he was being released at that stage, and he said that taught him one valuable lesson in life, and it was to always tell people before they find out about big decisions. And that 2-page spread in the Mail on Sunday, Oliver Holt with Neil Warnock, again, as Cliona said earlier, we're fascinated by these managers, but that is definitely worth a read.
Well, David and Cliona, thanks so much for giving us your insight on the Sunday paper review, and we'll speak soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, this is Off the Ball on News Talk here. John Duggan sitting in for John Malloy. Don't forget, we got live commentary later of the Republic of Ireland's Nations League match against Finland with Nathan Murphy and Stuart Byrne. Kicks off at 5 o'clock. We'll have the build-up from 4 from Lansdowne Road. Over the next hour, we're going to talk rugby with James Downey and Cian Tracy. Leinster, Munster, Ulster fans, we want to hear from you about the Pro 14 matches. Leinster fans, can you keep this amazing run going? Who's impressing you in the team right now? Munster fans, how do you stop falling short? What needs to happen to turn you back into a team that wins trophies? And Ulster fans, what was last night like? Ian Madigan's great kick, Dan McFarlane doing a top job up north. 53106, the number of your texts, or @Off the Ball on Twitter. Back after the news.
Off the Ball on News Talk.